Well, yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's really cool. I think that you picked up on that and that really landed with you. I really appreciate hearing that. It's one of the things, and I know you're going to segue over to think big here in a minute, but like as you know, I'm about to be for the first time a published author. I'll be able to say,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, I've written a chapter in a multi-author book, and honestly, the reason I wanted to do that is based on just exactly what you're saying. It's like I don't for a long time I wore the mask of like, hey, I'm really successful and look at all the amazing things I accomplished. Don't you want some of this, right? And that's just not who I am anymore, and I want to be very transparent. I want to be vulnerable. I want to be truthful about who I am and where I've come from, and it ain't always rosy.
Guys, I am super excited to introduce you to entrepreneur Sandy Stewart. Sandy is someone that I've known for a lot of years, and I have watched her entrepreneurial career just with great interest. She is a change maker. She is committed to making a difference and a true rippler. I'm super excited to have her join us for the Ripple Effect podcast. But let me give you her official bio. Sandy is the creator and founder of Think Big, an outsourced sustainability support and training program for small and medium-sized businesses. Her 22-year career helping SMBs and SMEs grow value now has added focus on what's known as the triple bottom line: people, planets, and profits. I love that. She believes that companies that care for their people, their customers, and their community have a duty to run a profitable, thriving business. She is one of the most incredible people. She is an absolute spitfire, and I can't wait for you to meet her. So let's dive right in. That looks really good. Well, so I've already done your intro, so we'll just dive in and just get going. How about that?
Oh my gosh. Okay.
All right. Any questions before we start?
I don't think so.
All right, cool.
We'll just chat like we always do.
Always do. Yeah, absolutely. Well, Sandy Stewart, welcome to the Ripple Effect podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to be here. I have
Uh,
my voice is a tiny bit hoarse, but it's it's my incognito today.
you're incognito. Were you doing vocal exercises before you came on here so that you could, just have that great
It's
projected
nothing.
voice?
It's not. Yeah, it's nothing more exciting than allergies. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, welcome to Central Texas, right? Uh,
Exactly.
yeah, I can relate absolutely. Last week I was having to speak out of town, and I was really concerned I was going to lose my voice before it happened. So I'm
Yeah.
right there with you, I promise. Well, listen, one of the things I like to do with this podcast, just to give our audience kind of a sense of who you are, is I always like to start with kind of the origin story, and I'd like to get a little bit of perspective about you, sort of how you grew up, kind of what influenced you to want to become an entrepreneur and be in the kind of work that you're doing now. And of course, we'll dive into the work that you're doing with Think Big, but I would love to hear kind of what led you to become the awesome person that you are today.
Oh my gosh.
We're setting the bar really high.
Okay. Well, it was funny because I was at an event recently that the networking question was, are you the first in your family, your immediate family, to be a business owner?
Mm,
Which I just thought was a really great question. I'd never actually
sure.
thought of it. And everyone at my table um, was the first. However, my dad was a doctor. My dad was a fourth generation physician and
Wow.
was in private practice. And so that was his business, right? And my
Yeah. Yeah.
mom, my mom ran the business. She was the office manager. So she was in charge of all of the accounting and, filing with the insurance and hiring and training. And I saw that, that's what I grew up, witnessing and seeing and experiencing. And as I got older and then got into, became an entrepreneur and got into business for myself, it was really cool because that was something that she and I got to relate on. My dad
Yeah.
passed away before I
Oh,
became an entrepreneur. So, we didn't ever really get to have those conversations, but I did get to have those conversations with my mom. She was always really interested in like what challenges was I facing that day and how were
yeah,
my
yeah.
employees doing. And it was actually really pretty cool.
Oh, that's good. Well, I mean, that's awesome. I'm sure your dad is proud of you, despite having to look down upon your greatness and your success. But I was saying in the intro how I've watched your entrepreneurial journey over the years. Because when you and I first met, you were just starting something. You were focused on a different venture, and I was so impressed with just your commitment to want to contribute and add value and really build a business that that did something significant, like made a huge difference. And you clearly did that with that first venture. You're obviously doing it through what you do now. And I'm curious that given that you kind of come from that background, right, and have that experience, a little bit different, but it's still really critical, important to kind of see how that kind of laid the foundation. But what's the best thing about being an entrepreneur in your mind?
Um, I mean, for me, it's about getting to see the things that I care about come to fruition, and it's for me. Like it's my
Yeah.
passions, it's my vision. That's, I think, the thing that brought me here. I think that's the thing that drives me
Yeah.
to keep
Yeah.
going.
I love that. Is that always, do you think, always been part of, sort of the underpinning of why you do what you do?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. When I first, yeah, when I first got involved in business coaching, it was interesting because I'd been brought on board by for an international Australian-based business coaching company that wanted to set up in the U.S. And um, it was interesting because there were some hills and valleys. Being a part of that organization, I ran my office. I mean, it was my own, even though I had this really cool network of support of
Yep.
other people doing the same thing, around me. um, and there was like this one period of time where a number of people they just kind of all fell off at the same time, and it was one of these things that
Mm.
was like a wave, right? And I mean, we're only talking a handful of people, but and then the eyes turned to me, and I'm just like, look, I don't like I feel driven to be here. I feel driven that this is what I want to do. So like I'm not leaving just because other people left, I'm not the sheep following them off the cliff. I'm here because this is what I want to be doing. And
Yeah.
I'm not done. So I think I've always had that drive to follow through on what's important to me and like really listening to my gut instinct on what is important to me.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
that's so important. And I know obviously some of the environments that you got exposed to during that time, clients that you were working with, you could tell how the difference, right? When you had organizations, people that were growing purely for maybe financial gain and maybe the wrong motivations. They were entrepreneurs, but they were maybe not the same type of entrepreneur like you and I, which is really geared around you and I really have that connection point in common. We want to build something that we can look back on and feel like there was a legacy that we've actually created something from nothing. And there's that sense of pride and ownership in what we're doing and what we're building. And so when you see entrepreneurs that are only in it for the quick buck or maybe for the wrong reasons, maybe you could talk a little bit about that in terms of those experiences and how challenging that was to work with those folks.
Well, and look, to be fair, I think because I've worked with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of businesses, and all privately held, which means they all started their company,
Yeah.
or inherited it. Some of them
Yep.
inherited it like a family business. So, they all got into it for different reasons. But I can tell you some of those that fall into the money trap, that you're talking about, some of them didn't start that way. That
Right.
wasn't their MO, like they
Yeah.
started with a passion, um, making something, selling something, but it was because they cared about something,
Yeah.
and like a lot of startups, a lot of small business owners, like you get the thing going and somewhere down the line, like that engine is running
Yeah. Yeah.
and now you gotta pay attention to the engine. You gotta run the business and it can be and then that can be a lot of years that business owner doesn't get reconnected to their why.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so some of them, there might be some that started because they just thought this is going to be a money maker and that's what I'm doing, and they don't really have their passion is the money. Although I will say that some folks, their passion is the money because there's things they want to do philanthropically with that money,
Yeah.
that will
Yeah.
feed their passion. So like, everybody kind of comes from that from a different place. But I will say that of the businesses that I've worked with where whether it's due to burnout or that's just who they are, but the business owners that end up getting stuck focused on the money, um, it it speaking of ripples, it creates
Yeah.
a ripple effect within the organization,
Yeah.
for their staff and their managers, but also, that idea, that culture, that feeling can ripple out to customers and the market, the broad market also. Yeah, I think it's important, and for a long time with the work that I was doing, I was really focused on trying to help those business owners get reconnected to their why.
Yeah.
It was frustrating for me when their why wasn't really a why for them. um, but or they never had it.
Right.
That's not frustrating. That's just like helping them find it,
Yep.
whether they're finding it again or finding it the first time. But I do think that staying connected to the why, especially, running your own business, because it can get tough, days can
Again.
get tough. And,
Yep.
like, of course, it's raining and pouring outside in Austin right now, but like that idea of like when it rains, it pours, like you can just have like five things go wrong in a day and just completely like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
But
Oh, yeah.
staying connected to that why, I think, is everything,
Well,
for
that
not
yeah,
just you, the business owner, but everybody involved.
exactly. No, I agree. That actually is one of the things that I had to share with you that stood out to me when you and I first, got connected and we had started having coffees and, a couple of happy hours and we were becoming friends. The thing that really impressed me about you was how you were so committed to helping those clients really figure that out, right? Because like you said, there were some that maybe got into it, kind of because they, I do remember distinctly you tell me about one family business and you're like, This guy should not be running this company, right? He should be doing something different." And you were trying to help him navigate that. But what I really appreciated about your approach, especially in, some of those early days where you were looking at the financials and you were looking at the model of what the business was, how do we acquire customers, how do we go about scaling those things. And what was impressive to me was, unlike other consultants and coaches that come in and they want to just hammer on that's the technical and the tactical. The piece that I think you and I really resonated on was the relational, right? You relating it back to their why, you relating it to the outcome of the customer, you relating it to how that scalability deals with brand and reputation and those things, and how when you started an engagement, those were the things that you were asking the questions about because that gave you a sense of purpose for what you were doing.
100%. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and also, I think it's for me, it's always been about simplifying business. It's like demystifying the complexity. Like it doesn't have to be that complex.
Yeah,
Like it becomes complex because it's emotional,
it
like
is. Yeah,
our ups and our downs are like they hit us. They hit us.
they do.
And so I think that's what makes it complex. But really, if you look at it objectively, there's only about 10 or 12 issues that a business can have. They can all be
Yep.
lumped into that. And so looking at it from that standpoint, I've always wanted to help simplify the issues and simplify the solutions. And sometimes, I mean, I've always heard people say, like, well, Sandy, you say that, it just sounds like you say that like it's so easy to do. And I'm like, well, it actually
Easy is
is.
relative, right?
Easy, yeah, but I mean, it's true. The core of everything that I've taught all these years on, running a better business and growing company value, and it's all really down to I've got a model that is the core of everything, which is based on the stages of growth that a business goes through. That is their behavior, their decisions and behavior are determined by how they feel about what's going on in the business. And,
Yep.
getting really clear about that takes the personalization out. It's like, oh, that's how I'm feeling really frustrated by this today, but that's
Yeah.
normal. I just need to deal with the situation at hand, you know?
Yeah.
And so I think that those things can, I don't know. I've had people tell me like I'm their business psychologist, I guess, their business therapist. But I mean, really, that's the core of it. And
Sure.
just helping them understand, like, you can have the feelings, you can have the emotions. That's cool. That's totally valid. Um, but let's also look at, objectively, like there's ways to, fix it that aren't actually super complicated.
Well, and that's the thing I really like about your approach is you get right down to brass tacks, right? The tactical aspects of whatever they need to do in order to improve or fix and really hone in on where do you want to go with what this is that you're building. And that's where I think you and I really resonated because early on when we were talking, I look at everything from a people problem perspective, right? And a lot of times when you're an entrepreneur and you're the founder leading it, it's a socially isolating place to be because you want to project that you are super successful, things are going well, even though you're crapping bricks because you don't know how you're going to make payroll 2 weeks from now. And, there's all these elements that really a lot of people don't understand unless they've done it. And that's why attaching it to your why is so critical because, if you don't have that as the underpinning of your motivation, then you often lose your telemetry, you lose you
Right.
lose your guide. And that's so important. And I think what to me always stood out is, how do you help those founders connect with, the thing I loved about what you were doing, before you switched, and we're going to talk about Think Big here in just a sec, but, thing that I loved about what you were doing is you were creating a sense of community amongst other founders where they could rely on one another to say, hey, have you been through this? Have you gone through this situation? Or I'm facing this. Anybody got any ideas? The value of that ripple of connection really to me stood out because at the end of the day, those types of opportunities, people won't look for them on their own. They need someone like you to sort of lead them down the path and connect those whys, right? This is why Sally wants to do what she's doing, and this is why Tom wants to do what he's doing. And even though you're not even in the same industry, you're not even committed to the same type of customer or
Right.
building the same kind of service or product, the why is the driver, and you've got one. How do we connect that so that you can support one another? I think that was the thing that really impressed me the most about what your commitment, because you took it beyond the individual coaching and consulting piece, but you're really like, okay, great, now that we have you fixed on where to go, what to do, now how do we do this collectively so that we create a sense of community and drive even more value for one another.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's really cool. I think that you picked up on that and that really landed with you. I really appreciate hearing that. It's one of the things, and I know you're going to segue over to Think Big here in a minute, but like as you know, I'm I'm about to be, for the first time, a published author. I'll be able to say,
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, I've written a chapter in a multi-author book, and honestly, the reason I wanted to do that is based on just exactly what you're saying. It's like I don't for a long time I wore the mask of like, hey, I'm really successful and look at all the amazing things I accomplished. Don't you want some of this, right? And that's just not who I am anymore, and I want to be very transparent. I want to be vulnerable. I want to be truthful about who I am and where I've come from, and you know, and it ain't always rosy, and I think someone told me, well, many people have told me that this would be beneficial, for it's scary, quite
Cathartic
frankly.
though.
Yes, it is cathartic,
Yeah.
but it's like, oh my gosh, people are about to see, warts and all, and that's kind of scary. It's like,
Sure.
what are people going to think and all that sort of thing. But like, I wanted to go through that process because I wanted to go through it in the multi-author book because now I've got other amazing professional women around me all facing the same challenge of what do I tell, what do I not tell, what's
Sure.
pertinent, what's personal, what's private, what's mine, what's available. It was a really incredible experience, and really at the end of the day, I just went through that process and realized, nothing's really that precious,
Yeah.
like about my story. You know what I mean?
Well,
And
so I
everybody,
disagree with you there. I mean, it is precious
well,
because you went through it, right? And that's your life. And it was having been given the honor to read it. Let me just say, I admired the hell out of you before. And that has gone up 20-fold because of what now seeing how open and honest you were about your story and your journey, right? And it wasn't an easy one. And people that will read this book will be inspired by it and the other authors that are in this book, which, by the way, the title of the book is
show your work.
Show Your Work.
Yeah,
And it
which is
releases very
amazing.
soon.
You
So
know?
by the time this actually comes out, it will have been released and available on Amazon and bookstores everywhere, probably, right?
Yeah.
The thing that I loved about it was you and your other fellow authors, you just left no stone unturned. You were, like you said, warts and all, because that's quite honestly that's what people out there that are maybe struggling or maybe going through situations that they can't see the end of. There's no light at the end of the tunnel, or so they think. They need to hear, right? They need to know that you not only went through these challenges and some monumental obstacles, but that you came through it. And look at you, you're here today, you're smiling, you're doing, this venture that you've got that I think is your true passion and true calling. You probably wouldn't have had that revelation as to just how far you've come until you started putting your journey onto the printed page.
I think that's true. I think that's true. And look, if my story inspires literally just one person, to find their own gumption, and grit to get past some of the challenges in life, because challenges in business are the life challenges that
That's
we
right.
face every day. Like it's all interconnected, and there is a payoff. Keep going.
Absolutely. Well, see, I can tell you right now, then you already achieved your goal because you have inspired me with what you've written. So I can't wait for everybody else to read it. And so we'll definitely put a link to the book in the show notes so everybody gets an opportunity to see it. But I highly
Okay.
encourage you to get an appreciation of Sandy's story for our audience. It's impressive and it really is. It's really honest. And the thing that I walked away from was just having more admiration for you and your journey. And I always had it, right? But now it's just increased that much more because I now know you're on the other end, and just it's total upside from where you're going, right? Or where you've been. And I'm proud of you for that.
Thank
Tell
you.
so te tell us about Think Big, because that actually is a big part of the journey and what you're doing now, and this concept that you're bringing out is maybe gonna be a little bit foreign to some people that might hear it and think about it, but it's such an important critical component. Talk about a ripple coming back in such a major way, right?
Yeah, I'm so excited about this. So having worked with small and mid-sized companies for 22 plus years, um, now what I'm doing, I'm not all of that is gone. A lot of it's really training, right? I've been training tools and methodologies for businesses to run a better business. And that's included strategic planning, company growth of value, like how do you understand the value of the company and how do you grow the value? Building strategic alliances, strategic partnerships, understanding how to read your financials and have forecasted financials, like really understanding kind of the graduate level of all of that. And how are you managing your people so that they are really happy and growing and thriving within the organization? I still have all of that. It's just now, look, this pivot started in the middle of the pandemic. I'm an earth girl at heart. I think for me, it all started with a commercial a million years ago. I'm dating myself, but I was a child and I saw the commercial with, the indigenous Indian with the tear coming down his face. I don't even have to say any more than that. Anyone that
Yeah,
saw that is like
yeah,
impacted, and it
yep.
impacted me. And I think because of that, it's just always stuck with me. And so, sustainability wasn't a thing 22 years ago, or at least it wasn't on my radar. At least I didn't really know what it was. And now I understand what it is. And I'm like, this is the way forward for businesses. When I had the opportunity to go back to school, University of Cambridge set their sustainable leadership program professional certificates online, and in the middle of the pandemic, that's what I took advantage of doing. And it was great. I mean, I just dove straight into that and learned heaps. And now I've got this amazing international network of,
Shocker.
oh my gosh, thank you. But completely like insane, the people that I'm connected with through all of that. It's really amazing and inspiring. Like seeing what companies are doing, the innovations, technology that's being developed around the world. And it's just that they haven't scaled yet internationally, these ideas and products and innovation, but they are coming. And
Yeah,
it gives me chills just thinking about it all. So, one of the things I wanted to do was I wanted to build a platform where I can bring hope to small and mid-sized companies, right? And and the hope is like it's not all doom and gloom. Like look at all these amazing things that are happening that other companies are doing, but then also teaching small and mid-sized companies like just how to start. When I started looking at sustainability as a career pivot, there's so many corporations that are hiring, sustainability officers, directors, managers to run, a department or a division. Small businesses don't have that. They don't have the funds and they don't have the time. And so I'm like, but that's the market I know and love and understand. I understand how those organizations run and how this can get implemented easily within those businesses. And so as I started to look around, I was like, there's not a lot of folks talking to the small and the small businesses about this. And I understand, because if you're in this space and you want to make a big impact, you're going to go work for the Nestle or the Nike or
sure.
REI, because helping that one company, you're going to have a massive impact. But Steve, there's over 30 million small businesses in the United States, right?
Mhm.
Like I want to help. My goal, my big, hairy, audacious goal is I want to help a million, which is not even touching the number, right?
Right.
But to me, that's my goal. I want to help 1 million small businesses to institute sustainability. And it's not like they're going to go net zero and achieve that, like it's that they're going to start. It's a mindset. And I think that's the thing that my biggest message for businesses, even if you're a solopreneur working from home. I'm about to actually start, I'm doing a 7-day challenge for either business owners or solopreneurs, startup entrepreneurs, or managers within a company that work from home at least a day a week. Because we're going to do a 7-day challenge of how to track your carbon footprint from working from home. What do offsets mean? What does that look like? And then I'm actually going to create some graphics for them about communicating that this is now a thing that they're tracking and that they care about. If you're looking just on the environmental front, because I really focus on 3, it's people, planet, and profits.
Yep.
So the planet piece is this, it's carbon footprinting, it's understanding how to reduce your carbon footprint, which, by the way, ipso facto, therefore, in a lot of cases means you're going to reduce costs, right? So it doesn't all have to be a big investment in, changing our fleet into electric vehicles. Yes, that would be amazing, but that's going to take some financing and some planning, and that might take a little while to do. But there's like 100 things that businesses could do today that don't cost hardly no money or very little money, and no time or very little time, right? And
or to your point, right, the ROI, right, of doing those changes could actually help accelerate the investment in doing the bigger things just by doing the small things.
Yes, yeah. And whether they start in the people place, the planet place, or the profits place, I don't care. Like, let's just start. Understand what those 3 components are, and let's just start. So planet is obvious. I think people have an understanding of what that might mean.
Yeah.
With carbon footprinting and offsetting and reducing the carbon. And it also can mean making sure that your product or service is environmentally friendly and, all of those things. The people piece is twofold. So it's your people internally, right? Are they happy? Are they thriving? Are they growing? Are they engaged in, a common vision and mission and purpose that the business is on the path for, right? But it's also externally in our community. So, what is the community, the greater good that the business you want to impact? And I'm apolitical. So I don't whatever it is that you decide is important to you, that's your fingerprint,
Yeah.
That's the thing that you're going to be known for. Let's get you connected to the things that matter to you.
Love that.
And so that's the community piece. And for people, and then the profits piece is, quite frankly, you can't focus on, well, you can, but it's not wise to focus on, people and planet if you're not also working on growing a thriving, profitable business. You need to know how to grow a thriving, profitable business so that it can support these other things. One of the biggest things, it's funny, I had a conversation with someone kind of toward the end of the pandemic, and their company had, I don't know, 6 months prior, had to let a bunch of people go. And then, 6 months down the track, they were kind of like, why are they now talking about profits? They want us to help grow profits. And I think a lot of employees think that means money in the owner's pocket. I don't think that they're connecting the dots to know what that means is people won't get laid off.
Yeah.
Sometimes a business has to lay off because they're not profitable.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of small businesses I know. I don't condone it, but I know a lot of small business owners that will reduce their own pay cut in order to keep payroll going.
Yeah.
that's not like that happens. That's
Yeah.
real.
Yeah.
Um,
I've done
so
it. You know, one of my startup ventures, I had to do that. So, you know,
I've done it. I've
I
done it
know.
also.
Yeah.
One month I paid myself $75 just to, I didn't even have it. I just needed, but I was like,
Yeah.
I gotta at least pay myself something.
Yeah.
But I did it. You have troughs, you have hills and valleys, um, and that's how you learn. That's
Yeah.
how a business owner learns and grows, so that they don't have to do that again.
Well, and like you said, that's kind of critical, and it's also like really the organization's responsibility to have these conversations often, be
Right.
open and honest about it, and why these things are being done. And in the sake of, or in the vein, I guess, of saying, hey, look, we're going to do EV fleet as opposed to what we have now. We've got to make some changes in the short term in order to get there. And the more that you can get people to embrace that mission internally, that comes from education, that comes from commitment from the organization perspective about where our loyalties lie and what the output and the expectations are for how we show up and do the work we do, and then
Right.
how they can actually see the potential benefits long term of where that impacts the business. And I think
Right.
that's the key, right? Is where it really help people really bring that front and center. It's like, well, okay, profitability maybe isn't that we've got major dividends to the shareholders and they're getting in yet another,
Right.
bump in their pay grade. It's legitimately being able to sustain the business to a level that allows us to continue to have jobs, provide the great products or services we have, hopefully with less and less impact to the planet, which then gives our brand and our reputation a bump, which drives more business and more
Yes.
profitability, which keeps
Full
us
circle.
employed. Yeah, it
Full
is a full
circle.
circle. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a true life cycle, from front to back and therefore. So I think those things are really important. And what I find is for organizations that, they talk a good game, but then you actually talk to the employees. Part of the problem is the disconnect. It sounds good. It's a soundbite. It's great on the corporate website, but if they're not actually putting in the work and the effort to make it part of the culture, part of the DNA of the organization, then there's a disconnect for sure, and people figure that out pretty quickly.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I really tout, right, is um well, the first message is sustainability is a very broad umbrella. It gets misunderstood. So I'm constantly talking about sustainability means a lot of things. It does mean climate, it does mean planet, carbon footprinting, it does mean those things, but it also means, you know, um, the people aspect and how, like, advocating for our employees. A lot of this, though, it's like we can put these things into place and market them. I think this is where the idea of greenwashing comes into play is,
Mhm.
companies that are overstating what they're doing, um, sometimes intentionally, sometimes unintentionally. Sometimes they don't realize all that they could be doing and they're only doing this and they don't know. They think they're doing it all and so they're going, we're doing it all.
Mhm.
But so sometimes it is unintentional and it's just a game of education, right? But it's really important to communicate internally to all of your stakeholders. Your employees need to understand what you're doing, and the word that I constantly talk about is the journey. You got to
Mhm.
communicate the journey. It's not the destination. It's not, you can talk about wins along the way, but brag about the journey. This is what we now realize we should be looking at. And so this is what we're starting to do. Like that can be bragged about,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
starting. You can brag about starting. And in informing your employees what you're doing as a company helps them to get engaged and helps them to, be a part of it. I think one of the biggest things too that's a benefit for businesses in all industries, is attracting amazing top talent.
Yeah.
There's so many studies out there. It's, Google it and everybody can find it. But millennials want to go work for companies that align with their values. Well, the only way they find out if that company's aligning with their values is the company's talking about it.
Yeah,
If
absolutely.
they're not talking about it and sharing about what they care about and how they're doing that, then they're not, it's hard for them to attract, new hires that want to align to those values. It's also, they did a study of business degrees, undergraduate business degrees coming out of college. They're actually willing to take a pay cut to work for a company that aligns with their values. Like, this is critical, and so it's mission critical, I think, as um, each year, another year of those young folks are coming into the marketplace to work.
Yeah, yeah,
And like, that is progressing, just the sheer number of potential pool of employees that you're going to have a better chance of attracting really amazing, top, talented people.
yeah,
And it helps employees to stay engaged in a company. If
for
they feel like
sure.
they know how to engage in that, they know what part they play. Um, I've had companies where they've set up, like, kind of around an initiative, like, let's set up a by volunteer, like an internal working group to help us come up with 10 things we're going to do this year around this initiative, and people get really interested in that. And then it's also different if you're an employee in that business and you see some of your peers coming up with these really cool ideas, and you're like, that sounds fun, let's do that, right?
Yeah,
So there's a lot of different ways, I think, to do it. But banks are beginning to look at ESG, environmental, social, and corporate governance is really what ESG is. But that's where the model People, Planet, Profits comes from. That's an
mhm,
internet. I didn't come up with that. It's an internationally adopted framework. But banks are starting to look at that for businesses.
yeah,
For loans, more in the larger companies. But, like, it's coming.
sure.
And if you're a business that is a supplier to a larger company, um, there's a thing called scope. I like to call it scope 3 trickle down. Scopes 1 and 2 and 3 are the ways of tracking carbon footprint. There's a component of scope 3, which is your supply chain. So if you're a large company and you're buying products or services from someone smaller, a vendor of yours, a lot of those, in order to fulfill their scope 3, they need to report on what their suppliers are doing.
Yeah, yeah,
So eventually, suppliers are going to need to be tracking their carbon footprint, or at least starting to, because those buyers may end up having to buy it from a different vendor that is tracking,
that's right. Yeah,
right? Um, and then also, like, if a company in the US is selling, well, anywhere, to a company in the EU, which is pretty broad,
yeah,
European
yeah,
Union, it was just, I think it was like 2 months ago, that they're requiring that the supply chain, international supply chain, has ESG reporting for EU companies.
yeah,
So it's coming. In the U.S., we don't have nearly as much regulation as they do in other countries. We're really, the U.S. This is one area that the U.S. is really far behind the rest of the world.
yeah.
We will catch up. um,
Well, like you said, right, at the end of the day, it's coming. So getting out ahead of it, having an understanding of where you can make your individual contribution, whether you're running a business, you own a company, or even where as an employee, you could start to throw some ideas on the table to become, more of a sustainability champion within your organization. I
right.
think that's super critical. So people can learn more about the programs that you're offering through give them some direction on website.
Think Big Impact.
Think
Dot
big
com.
impact. Okay.
Dot
Yeah.
com. And look, the thing that I've created in there is an online training platform. I want to make it really easy, quick and easy, and economically viable. So it doesn't need to cost an arm and a leg for business owners and for sustainability champions. It can be a manager. The tools in there teach not just sustainability components, but also it's got to fit in with a company's strategy and direction. So it's also teaching strategic components as well, which is great for any manager, for furthering
Sure.
their career. But thinkbigimpact.com will always lead directly to any of the 7-day challenges, any of the webinars that I do occasionally, and the online training itself.
Awesome. I mean,
Yeah,
you're definitely creating some positive ripples with this work. And like I said, I know you're on the path that you are ultimately destined to be on. So I'm so proud of you.
thank
So let
you.
me switch gears really quick. We do this little segment at the very end where I just ask you some ripple connection questions. Are you game?
Okay,
All
I'm
right.
game.
So let me ask you this. What is the best piece of advice you've received and how have you used it?
um, this one is actually kind of fresh in my mind because I put it in my chapter in the book. And that was when I first got started, 22, whatever years ago, um, being female, being young and looking really young. I looked really young, being blonde. It was like, it was so hard for me to feel confident, like going into a business, trying to convince, a seasoned CEO, mostly males, that they should buy me, that I've got something to teach them, right? Because they're looking at me going, "What?" Right? But that advice was, Sandy, do you have even just one thing? Do you know one thing that could help them? You don't need to know everything more than them. Do you have one thing that is of value that you can provide to them that could change the way that they're doing things? And I'm like, yeah, I've actually got more than one. They were like,
Yeah.
but one is all you need. That's all you need is the one thing. And it totally changed it for me.
Yeah.
It made me realize, like, I don't have to match, their level. Like, they should have that level of experience and knowledge.
That's
I
why they're
don't need
there. Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
That's theirs, but I do have something that they would want, and that, like, completely changed it for me.
I love that. That's awesome. What is your superpower?
So my superpower is that, and I only get this superpower, by the way, when I am fully spiritually intact, meaning, like, my cup is full. And it doesn't mean I've got all the money in the bank. It doesn't mean, you know what I mean? It doesn't mean I have all the things I want, but, like, I am good. My heart is quiet. Like, I'm in a good place. I feel very grateful for the life around me and what I have. And I'm full of love and vigor. When I can do all the things to take such great care of myself that that's where I am, then my superpower is I create sparks. It might be kind of like a ripple, but I create sparks for other people. It's like, what's the thing they're missing? What's the thing that they need to be connected to? Like, or what's the message they need to hear sometimes? Like, I don't need to be the magic one, I don't need to be the guru. Like, I can do that for other people. That's my spark. That's my magic.
I love it. That's a great answer. Where do you find your inspiration in those quiet moments?
um, that's a good one. So it's quite personal. I this may sound really strange, maybe, I don't know, but, like, I seek to listen to all of the people that I have loved, family and friends who have passed on. like I listen to them.
Yeah.
Sometimes I sit down when I need some direction, I need some inspiration, I need some help, and I just say, okay, who's with me today?
Yeah.
And you know, help me to hear your whispers and feel your nudges. That's what I
I
need.
love that. Oh, that's a great phrase. I love that. Where do you want to be 5 years from now?
Well,
Will you be halfway through the million or three quarters of the way through the million?
I'll be definitely halfway through the million. But the thing that I think I really want, I want to one thing that's really important to me values wise for my own life is that I have created a life where my work is virtual. I don't have to be in any one single place. There's a lot of this planet that I really want to explore.
Yeah.
And I don't want to leave my exploration to nights and weekends. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying I'm gonna like, be want to do the van life. I mean, I might, right? But I want to be able to work from anywhere
Yeah.
and really, really explore. I had this conversation. I have a friend right now that's doing that. She, in fact, is in her third month of being, working from somewhere else. Right now, she's in Bali
Yeah.
for the month of April.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you are doing it.
Yeah.
Yes. So
That
that's what I want. That's I want to be thriving in a business, helping, my path on the millions and doing it from beautiful places.
I love it. Yeah. Well, one of my former guests, who's been on the podcast twice, is Lisa Bussett, and she is actually doing exactly that. She got a van, she saved up all her money, and she is living her best life as an artist, and actually probably making more money now than she ever did,
Sweet.
because she is, living what she was destined to do. Right? She's on her true path and true passion. So that whole digital nomad lifestyle is very much a potential, and especially in the kind of business that you're going to be in, much of those great clients and opportunities are going to take you to places that are probably pretty great to be working at from a virtual perspective. So I definitely see that in your future, without question. My last two questions, what does the ripple effect mean to you?
Well, it's funny because you and I've had conversations around ripple effect for many years. Um, and I think the one thing that you and I've always connected on, and you touched on this earlier on in our conversation today, but how we both have a value, a belief, strong belief, and a value in making connections for other people.
Yeah.
And I think it can be, for me, it can be people. I think this is probably for you too. I'm speaking for myself, but I think it can be for sure like connecting people with other people. But I also feel like it's sometimes it's just connecting the dots. Sometimes people can't see that this thing that's important to them and this other thing that's important to them, like they actually are connected.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's a short path between the two. And so I feel like anytime I'm able to have a positive influence, whatever that looks like for another person, it just creates calmness and quiet and resolve in themselves that then they will, whether intentional or not, they will naturally do that. It's a pay it forward kind of
Yep.
energy. It's an energy.
Yep. I love that. That's fantastic. Well, last question. What is, and you are absolutely without question a rippler. You create those. I mean, yeah, I love you're the rippler with the spark. I love that piece. I love that imagery. What ripple can I be creating for you?
Oh my gosh. I mean, this is right. This is automatically, I think continuing the conversations, um, there, look, I'm going to continue as I continue to work with more companies, going through more experiences with them, creating some really incredible war stories. I mean, just like what I said earlier, here's the thing, just what I said earlier, when I got connected to the whole sustainable leadership program in University of Cambridge and everybody that's going through that, and seeing just the sheer magnitude of number of initiatives, products, technologies, stuff, innovations that people are coming up with around the world that are going to solve such cool stuff, Steve,
Yeah.
like cool. I just feel like getting into this work and doing these really amazing things with smaller businesses, maybe they're not coming up with these amazing innovations that are going to solve the planet's resources, but they're coming up with some really cool shit. Pardon my French.
Yeah.
But it's like, if I can continue to share some of that hope, with you, that's everything to me.
Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
you can absolutely do that. You can always count on me to be your biggest fan. I am so grateful for our friendship. I'm so glad that we connected so many years ago, and to be, a small part of this entrepreneurial journey that you're taking, especially now, right? Where I think that, I just see this complete aura of energy surrounding you about what you're doing and how you're doing it and the ripples that you're creating. It's just super inspiring. So I'm so thankful that you've agreed to be on the Ripple Effect podcast. Before we go, tell people how you would want them to follow you or to get engaged in the movement. Obviously, we talked about the website, but share that one more time, and then any social handles that would be important for people to, follow along on your journey.
Yeah, sure. So the website is thinkbigimpact.com. I am pretty active on LinkedIn. So Sandy Stewart on LinkedIn, which that link can also be found on thinkbigimpact.com. And also I'm pretty active. I have I'm pretty active on Instagram as well. So Sandy Stewart _ but also Think Big Program.
Awesome. It's both. You have two handles, two things that you're doing on Instagram.
Yes.
All
Yeah.
right. I love it. Yep. I follow you on both. And I know you are active and do some really great posts. So Sandy, thanks so much for being a part of the Ripple Effect podcast. I am so grateful for your time today. And I know our audience is going to want to tap in and, figure out how they can, become a part of what you're doing, because you're creating some really big ripples out there in the world. So thanks for doing it.
Waves. My ripples are becoming waves.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Well, guys, we'll be back with another episode of the Ripple Effect podcast very soon. But until then, ripple on.
Awesome. Thank you.